In this session, we are going to talk about user input in Python. In most cases, we need to interact with users to get data from them and show results to them. To get data from the user, we use user input, where the user input the data instead of predefining the data. For user input, we use the input function. The input function takes the input from the user and then stores it in a variable. Before storing it in a variable, input converts the data into a string. Whenever we call the input function, it usually stops the code and waits for user to provide input. Whatever input the user provides, the input function converts it into a string. For example, here I am creating a variable, my name, and then instead of predefining the data, we use the input function. Within parentheses, we can write any text like enter your name. This text is basically a message that would be displayed on the output screen to ask the user to input the data. This text is optional. Even if you do not write a message, the input function will work perfectly fine, but the message usually helps the user to input a correct value. Now let's print the value of the variable using print my name. So here on the output screen, you can see that our code is stopped and is waiting for input from user. Let's provide input, and here I am typing my name, Danyal. Once I press enter, you can see that it prints Danyal. So the user input function takes input from the user on the output screen and then stores it in a variable my name. Now let's take another input which is in the form of numbers like num equal to input, enter a number. Now let's print num, and here again it waits for input. Here I'm inputting 2. Let's run the code and it displays that the num holds the value of 2. But let's print type of num, and here I am typing print type num. Now let's run the code. Here again it is asking for the input and I am inputting 2 again. You can see that the type is str because the input function always converts input into a string. Now if we want our input in integer form, then we have to specify the data type with our input function. Like here, before input, I am specifying a data type by writing int. And then within parentheses, we call our input function. Let's run this code again, and here I am inputting 2, and you can see that the type is int now. So for the input function, you always have to specify the data type if you want your data in any form other than string. Now let's write another code to add two numbers. Here I am creating a first variable which is num1, and I am specifying the data type as int, and then calling the input function with the message input the first number. Let's create another variable num2, then specify the data type as int and take user input with the message input the second number. So far, we have created two variables which will store two integers for the user input. Now let's create another variable named result, and within it let's add num1 and num2. So the result variable will hold the result of addition of num1 and num2. Now let's print our result, and here within the print function I am typing our result is, and then using a comma and then calling our variable result. Let's run this code, and you can see it is asking for the input of the first number. I am inputting 4 and it converts 4 into an int and then stores it in a num1. Now let's input a second number, and you can see that our result is 10. So the input function takes the data from the user. The int function converts it into an integer and then stores it in a variable. Within the result variable, we store the result of our calculation. So that's it for today's video. If you found this video helpful and interesting, then do subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the bell icon so that you keep receiving programming videos.